So if any of the wildlife sanctuary is in news, then you must know that what is the basic about this wildlife sanctuary, what type of the fauna and flora which is very specific to that particular wildlife sanctuary existing over there.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so you never miss an update from Prep Ladder.
Hey dreamers, Prelims 2022 is round the corner and only few days are left. So I hope you have read thoroughly the current affairs and your static portion. My name is Prem Sodhani and you are watching Prep Ladder UPSC channel. In this video, I'm gonna talk about the areas which you have to focus upon in the last minute revision, and especially I'll talk about the current affairs section. Now, if you go through the previous year question papers of UPSC, then you might have seen around 15 to 20 questions are there from the current affairs section, and they are not directly from the current affairs. They have some kind of linkages also with the GS content, and some of the questions out of these current affair questions are directly from the news. Okay, so if you are going through the newspapers continuously throughout your preparation, then some of the questions would be very easy for you. For example, some terms will appear. Recently, this was in news. What is this? Like there was a question, Texas oil crude category is there. So what is Texas Intermediate? This was the question of UPSC. So if you read the newspapers thoroughly, then this type of the terms would be there in the newspapers. So you can answer easily if you have gone through that one. Now, if we talk about precisely about the subjects, means in this particular subject, what type of the current affair can be asked? So I'll start with the economy, because in economy, many of the questions would be there from the current affairs. Especially if we talk about the economic survey and budget, some of the questions would be from there directly. If new schemes are introduced, then you should know how this scheme is going to be beneficial for the target beneficiaries, and what is the aim and objective of this particular scheme. If there was some similar type of scheme was existing or not. If it was existing, then how this new scheme is going to be different from the past scheme, that you should focus upon. Okay, so in case of economy, the current happenings, for example, Sri Lanka's BOP crisis is going on there. You must be aware about the BOP. What is capital account? What is current account? How this BOP is managed? How IMF helps in BOP crisis? Okay, so this type of the basic understanding should be there. Let's say inflation is going on in our country. Then how inflation is going to be controlled by RBI? How government is intervening in controlling this inflation? What is the inflation range that we have decided, that is 4 to 6%, and how we are committed towards that? What is wholesale price index, WPI? What is other type of the CPI, and how these two are different? Why we are seeing this type of the inflationary trends? So this type of the things. What is RBI's open market operations? What are the quantitative and qualitative tools that RBI uses in case of the control of these inflation and interest rates? Okay, so you should have that type of the understanding. So in the case of economy, many of the current affairs would be there. So please prepare them in this particular point of view. You can go through that current affairs of the economy. Okay. Now, if I talk about the international affairs, again, this is going to be very important area. If there is new developments, for example, some Quad meeting was there. What was the outcome of this Quad meeting? When Quad established? Okay. So what is the aim of this Quad? Anything which is happening in the Indian Ocean, it is going to be very, very important. For example, Europe came up with its strategy in the Indo-Pacific. So you can see the importance. Europe is also focusing on this Indo-Pacific Ocean, and US already have its entire focus in this area. Why this area is so much important? Why China's presence is there? How much trade is going on through this Indian Ocean. If you know that thing, then you would know the importance of this Indian Ocean. Okay, what is what are the various ports where India has its presence? For example, Dukam port. So India has the access of this Dukam port. Okay, so in this way you can see the current affairs in case of international organizations. So organizations are important. If any convention had happened, that is important. And nowadays Russia and Ukraine war is going on, so you must know various type of the conventions which are related to the weapons. For example, weapon of mass destruction, like biological convention, nuclear proliferation treaty, then chemical convention. And how India is the member of these conventions means we are the signatory or not, you should know that thing. Some of the initiatives like NATO was in news, like CSTO, it was also in news, Collective Security Treaty Organization. Bucharest 9 was in news. So what all these are, you should know at least about them. Okay. Recently, Montreal's Convention was also in news, where Turkey controls the Strait of Bosphorus and Dardanelles. Okay. So you should know precisely whatever there it was in news. You should know a basic information about that. And in case of the international relations, mapping is the another important area, which is the favorite area of UPSC, because nowadays this Baltic Sea, not Baltic Sea, Black Sea was highly in news. Then you must know the countries which are surrounding this Black Sea, the Strait of Bosphorus, which connects Black Sea to Sea of Marmara. Then you should know the Strait of Dardanelles. Okay, these are very important areas. And for example, some other areas were in news, like Nagorno Karabakh region. It is still in news. Then you should know the areas around. If I talk about Ukraine and Russia, then you should know the location of Poland, Belarus, because these were in news. You should know their capital and the arrangement of capital north to south, west to east. At least you should have that much of the understanding that you can see them from the prelims perspective. Okay. And another important area, Middle East, it is always in news, so you should focus on this Middle East area. And Kazakhstan was also in news because of the civil unrest. Then you should know the Kazakhstan and the countries which are surrounding that Kazakhstan. Aral Sea is there. So what are the countries which are surrounding Aral Sea? Okay, Indonesia, you can see, has shifted its capital or planning to shift its capital. Then what is the new capital and on which island it is located? Okay. Southeast China Sea, it is always in news. Then you should know some of the important islands which are there in case of mapping exercise. We have also covered this mapping thoroughly on our app. You can find the mapping related videos. Kuril Islands, they were in news. So you should know whatever was in news. At least their location you should know. This was in news and this is the location of this particular island. Okay. So international relation, just focus on the institutions. Any if summit is there, for example, Quad Summit was there. So what is this summit all about? Then you should know the important areas which were in news, and especially from the mapping perspective. Please focus on Middle East and then Indian Ocean. These two are the favorite area of UPSC in case of the mapping. Okay. Now, if we talk about the another subject, that is environment. So in case of the environment, the most important thing is, because Indian Forest Services are also associated with the UPSC Prelims. So this area is highly important. In this case, you should know some of the very important organizations and you can go through their website. If you will go to the website of UNFCCC, the new initiatives would be there on the website. You just know about something about that organization and that will work in case of your prelims. Okay. So the new initiatives, whatever the new initiatives are there, new funds are there which are related to the environment, you should know about them. For example, this time Glasgow Summit was there. What were the outcomes and how India has committed, what India had said in case of the targets of Paris climate deal, how we revise those targets, and how India is going to be carbon neutral country by 2070. Some of the new initiatives were launched in Glasgow summit. Then you should know at least about these new initiatives. Okay, so in case of the environment, please focus on the international organizations which are working in this direction, the funds, various funds which are working in that direction of environment. Then you should know some of the important species, okay, especially critically endangered and endangered species which were in news. They will be asked. Then you should focus on the current developments, especially I'm talking about India. For example, India now has 14 tiger reserves which meets the standards of CATS. Then you should know what the CATS standards are and what was the new entry in these 14 tiger reserves. You cannot remember all these 14, but at least you should remember the last 2 or 3 which were the recent entry in this list. Okay, what is CATS convention, CATS standard, and that you should know, basic understanding of that will do. Okay, then some of the national parks were highly in news. For example, Satkoshia Tiger Reserve, which was in news because we were planning to shift some of the tigers from MP to that Satkoshia Tiger Reserve, but this project failed. Then you should know the location of this Satkoshia Tiger Reserve. Then you should know the location of that MP's tiger reserve from where we were planning to send some of the tigers to this Satkoshia Tiger Reserve. So this type of the knowledge you must have. Then tiger reserves of Sariska. It was also in news, Sariska in Rajasthan. Then 53rd, I think this was the tiger reserve, that is Ramdhari Dinkar Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan, that has also been notified from the government of India. So what exactly the location of this tiger reserve is, why this was created? Because it works as a corridor between Mukundra Tiger Reserve and Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, and the density of tigers in Ranthambore is increasing, and therefore we need a corridor so that they can go to Mukundra Tiger Reserve. So this much of the basic understanding you must have. Okay, just go through these news which were especially these national parks, various wildlife sanctuaries, and please focus on the wildlife sanctuaries of Northeast, because every year or the other UPSC will ask a particular wildlife sanctuary where this sanctuary is located. Okay, so this is important, especially in case of Northeast and the southernmost part of our India. So if any of the wildlife sanctuary is in news, then you must know that what is the basic about this wildlife sanctuary, what type of the fauna and flora which is very specific to that particular wildlife sanctuary existing over there, what are the water bodies which are there, and the tribes living nearby. This much of the information you must have. Okay, then if I talk about the another areas like art and culture, so in that case some of the important current affair, because this is more about the aesthetic subject, but still some of the current happening would be there. For example, Lothal, Mohenjo-daro, these were in news. Why they were in news? Because UNESCO recognized some sites, and this Lothal site was also there. So you should know what is this Lothal site. Some of the caves will be there in the news. We have found this much of the cave. We have found this particular painting in the Haryana caves. Okay, so this type of the understanding you must have to have in case of the art and culture. Another areas in art and culture are, for example, some important personality dies from the he was a dance performer or particular classical type of the dance he was performing. Then you should know what dance it is, what are the classical dances, and which particular dance was in news, and what was the reason why it was in news. This type of the understanding you must have in case of the art and culture. Some of the tribes and their festivals are always important. For example, if I talk about Apatani tribe, it was in news because of their special clothing pattern, that is zigzag pattern of the cloth, which was filed for the GI tag. Then you should know where this Apatani tribe lives, that is in Arunachal Pradesh, Zero Valley, and what are the important festival of this Apatani tribe? That is Dri festival, very important festival. That is harvest festival. Then Miyoko festival, that is the festival of friendship in this Apatani tribe. So you should know this tribe, about something about this tribe you should know. Okay. Now, if I talk about the polity, then the question from the polity would be more or less from the static subject only, and you must have prepared that static, because polity is going to be very important if I talk about the prelims. In case of the current affairs from the polity, you would be able to clearly see them, because some of the bills, amendments which were in news, they will be the part of your prelims. Okay. For example, if any private member bill was introduced, then they will ask a question on private members bill, how they are going to be passed, how many bills in the past have been passed of these private members, what is private member. So you should have this type of the basic understanding. Okay. Otherwise, most of the questions from the polity would be from the static part. Okay. If there is any bill, any development was in news, for example, there was a fight between Lieutenant Governor and the CM of Delhi, then you should know what the powers are in case of the Lieutenant Governor in Delhi, how Lieutenant Governor is different from the Governor of the state, because governors are the head of the state, but in case of Lieutenant Governor, they are not the head of the state, they are merely an agent to the president. Okay. Recently, one amendment was in news, that is MCD, Daily Amendment Bill. Then you should know the important provisions, how these MCD bills are going on in our country, and what is the aim of this MCD bill. In this way, you should know this basic about this current happenings. Okay. Now, if we talk about the history, so in case of history, there would be a very static questions would be there from this section. If something is in news, some figure, we can say some personality was in news. For example, Raja Ram Mohan Rai was in news for some case. I'm just saying hypothetically. Then you should know something about Raja Ram Mohan Rai and how he has changed the socio-political scenario at that time. So you should know that thing. Now, if we talk about the science is very important when it comes to the prelims. The areas of science are very much fixed. If you have gone through the previous year question papers, you could easily recognize them. For example, space section is the area that you should focus upon. In case of the space, the various missions of not only ISRO but also of NASA, they are very important. You should know basic about them. Then if something new has been launched from the India, for example, DRDO had made something, so you should know that one. Some of the new areas in case of the military capability, you should know that. For example, they will ask you INS Wagshir, it was in news. So what is this INS Wagshir? This is under Project 75 that we are making with the help of France. So these are diesel Scorpion class, or these are nuclear capability wale INS are there. So you should know about them. And another important area in case of the science is the new technologies. For example, 5G technology is there. For example, 3D printing technology is there. Artificial intelligence related things are there. Metaverse is highly in use nowadays. What is this metaverse? And some of the another new technologies, they will be the part of your prelims. Okay. So just read them, some basic about them. Then if I talk about the science current affairs, the biotechnology, this is also a very important area, and especially this time GM crops are in news. GM rubber, India has introduced this GM rubber in Assam. So what these GM crops are, and another important area in these transgenic crops is now there are three type of the genetic engineering that you can see in the plants, that is SDN1, SDN2 and SDN3. In case of SDN1 and SDN2, the foreign gene will not be there in this plants, GM plants. But in case of SDN3, foreign genes can be there in this SDN3 category. So SDN1 and SDN2 will not have to seek the permission of Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. just by the approval of biosafety committee, these two crops can be introduced into the atmosphere, okay, into the our climate. So you should know what this SDN1 and SDN2 is. You should know the basic things about genetic engineering appraisal committee and something basic about the biosafety committee, and then you should know the basics about GM crops and how and why they are not being introduced at a large scale. Okay, you should know basics about them. So these are the areas that you should have to focus upon. I hope I have covered all the sections of this current affairs where you have to focus. Don't worry about the extensive coverage. Just go through the very important areas that are always being asked by the UPSC. Just go through them. If you have read throughout the year, then it would not be a problem to solve the question of current affairs, which are generally not that much of difficulty level. If they are of the difficulty level, then this would be a difficult question for everybody, not for you only. Okay, so these are the areas, please focus on them. Just revise your content again and again, and don't go through by the new content. Don't read something new in these days, because now it is the time to revise whatever you have read throughout the year. Okay, please be confident, because if you have read throughout the year, then it is not going to be very problematic. Okay, just have confidence in yourself. Thank you very much, and all the very best for your prelims examination. Thank you.